Hi, good afternoon, fellow educators. Hope everyone's doing great, enjoying your weekend. Lesson plans are going just swimmingly. I wanted to check in today to talk to you about a research-based article that I took a look over. This one is titled Designing and Implementing Group Contingencies in the Classroom. Now, I know what you may be thinking, great, another article about group work, and I know. But diving into this one, I think it provided some very rich insight into maybe some critical things that we can do as educators to help improve the behavioral side of our classroom and in turn help either the productivity we have or establish a more positive learning environment for those with special learning needs, minimize distractions, all those things that we really hope to do as educators. And I think what really is unique about this article here is that it lays out three very fundamental things that can take place. It's a system, as they like to call it, that will help perhaps bring some more normalcy to our classrooms. I'll speak for myself, but I know that any amount of instruction or any degree of preparation can be washed away by poor classroom management. And I think it's critical that we lament these early and often, and therefore establish the best learning environment. So I want to take you through a few of the key points that the authors here outlined in this. Kind of the central focus that they maintain throughout this research-based article is the notion of positive reinforcement. And they talk about it here on the left-hand side, but sometimes it feels like we are constantly putting out fires, as they like to say it, and I feel like that as well. I know too often it's about clamping down on negative behavior, but the authors kind of take the spin in the sense of reinforcing positive behavior. And if you dwell upon the good things going on in your classroom, it'll make more students be inclined to receive that praise and to partake in those positive activities. They talk about it here in the central column, but also a little bit on the right. But a lot of this MTSS, the multi-tiered support system, really focuses on having this as well in terms of reinforcing positive behavior and trying to minimize some of these distractions. They mention students with ADHD and ADD, things that you'll oftentimes see within your IEP specifically. And as such, the concept they try to lay out is that similar to UDL, how we talk about universal design of learning, the same can be done in behavioral supports, is that you can actually design your classroom specifically to meet the needs of all behavioral types, regardless of whether it be IEP 504 or just a gen ed student who may have difficulty focusing or whatever it may be. And their approach or their systematic suggestion of how to manage classroom behavior actually transcends all different levels, and they do talk about it in here. They break it down broadly into what they call the three prongs of this, but they include establishing clear classroom expectations, which I know most of us do. I know I do myself. But then explicitly teaching the expectations is the second step, and that's pretty unique in how they say that. It's so easy for us to slap a poster up there and just say, look, guys, here's the class rules. Let's make sure we follow them or there will be consequences. But that second step of explicitly teaching them, when's the right time to ask about this? Or what's the proper way to approach the situation? And we must model that as educators. That's truly what our role is. And then the third one is intriguing to me. The authors encourage a rewards-based system to reinforce positive behaviors. Now, admittedly, this is geared for, I would like to say, the lower grades, but even in secondary education, I believe that there's a role for this as well. Regardless of the age, everybody responds to incentives. And even at the high school level, if kids have an opportunity to have free time on their phones or watch a video or whatever it might be, I mean, they'll jump over a lot of hurdles to get there. And I find that to be very true, which is kind of why this article itself stood out to me. So what differentiates this approach to maybe some of the other more classical approaches to behavioral management is part of the design in it. So they talk about group contingencies and they talk about choosing your groups. And a lot of times we do proximity. You may try to target maybe someone with special behavioral supports with someone who is really receptive of those, to group dynamically. And that makes perfect sense for the most part. The bigger thing is more so, how are you going to lay this out there for them? How are you going to show the students the way that you wish to have them act in the confines of your classroom? And that's largely dependent on how you outline the class structure. So as we see up here, it says the first step in designing a group contingency is choosing the behaviors you want students to exhibit. So they say target behaviors should be clear, positively stated, and easy for the students to understand. So we make our groups and we understand, hey, whatever, it may be a stations activity, it may be group work, but we know exactly how we want each individual to act within that group, and we are going to review them as a whole. As we actively review the student behavior and the group behavior, they talk about the point system in a sense of two approaches. They say you can commend the behavior in one of two ways: positively, so you receive points for exhibiting good behavior, or negatively, your group loses points. And the underlying concept would be the group support idea, that your group will hold you responsible for the actions you either do or do not take. And that can be a stronger support system than having a teacher necessarily reprimand you or consistently correct you. And it helps a lot of students really hold each other accountable, which is something that I think as educators we strive for more often than not. They talk about how these points are rewarded for positive and negative behavior, how frequently. Maybe if you're doing a stations activity, is it at each station you determine and you keep your running tally as an educator, or perhaps it's for the day, for the week, and then you reshuffle the groups. But it must be something tangible. They argue that students, if you want to reinforce positive behavior and you want to have a group dependency upon this, that they must know how frequently they'll be assessed. They must be able to see the assessment, quantify the results from it. And then the last one, select the rewards, I find very interesting. The reason this stands out to me is that my average class size is 28 students, and that's a lot of students. There's no way I could necessarily afford to buy rewards for everything, but they say sometimes it's just small tokens. It could be the opportunity to watch a YouTube video as a reward. I know some of my students, this is their favorite, but once in a while, if they're doing things well and exceeding expectations, we take a walk, and that's literally we'll just go from our hallway down to another hallway and come back in the middle of class, and they love that. It's that break in education, but it's not necessarily monetary rewards in terms of you have to go buy bagels or whatever it might be. They could be small tokens to reward these positive behaviors, but they speak volume. And in turn, what the authors argue is that having this clear system in place where you outline class expectations for the group and by and large for individuals, you model these positive behaviors, you show them exactly how you should be doing things, and you reward them for following through on that. The underlying benefits of having this classroom structure are far more conducive to those with special learning needs. You minimize distractions, you help minimize adverse behaviors, you help increase student engagement, you make more of a positive learning environment. And you spend less time as an educator policing and necessarily putting out fires and solving bad problems. I really like the last bit they have right here where they said, instead of using a reprimand, praise a student nearby the misbehaving group, or use a bonus point to remind the groups of what they should be doing. And I think that's huge. We talk so much about the positivity that we try to bring to our classrooms as educators. And rather than reprimanding a group that may be off task for whatever reason, we praise the group immediately nearby for the positive behavior. And that's more of the reinforcement that we'd like to see. It's not about putting people down. It's about picking those up who are doing the right thing and setting the example and creating models for our students of what should be done. So by and large, I really enjoyed looking through this article. I think for any of us, as a second year teacher myself, or I'm sure as a seasoned veteran, classroom management is very dynamic. We can always find ways to improve. And I just really like the positivity that this article showed. I really enjoyed the way that it's not about policing and keeping people in line, but it's about preaching this positive culture and making people and your students, co-teachers, want to be a part of the educational environment you're building. And as that relates to learners with special needs, I think that's exactly what we talk about. It's not about pull-out classrooms. It's not about anything. It's about keeping everyone involved, everyone pulling on the same rope, everyone trending in the correct direction. And I think this is a very positive way to incorporate this by means of behavioral management. So I hope you enjoyed this discussion. I encourage you to look through this article. I think they have some very interesting points. It costs you no money. It's just really solid advice and something that we can all use to help make sure our classrooms run smoothly. Thank you, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.